So hey everybody, welcome back to the Clinical Trials Guru webinar number 3. My name is Dan Sfera. This is Chris Sauber. He joins me on all the webinars. So together we are DSCS, Sweat Equity and Investments. So what does that mean, Chris? What do we do?
Whatever needs to be done in research.
That's right. So we'll either partner with you or we'll consult with you. Some people want to partner with us. What that means is you give up some of your equity, but it costs you nothing. Other people may not want to do that, and so they pay us a monthly fee, and we have different prices. So if you're interested in anything, most people call first about getting studies, but then we find out that they need help with a number of things like negotiating budgets, recruiting patients, recruiting PIs, which is what this webinar is going to be about, how to find, locate, and fairly compensate / partner with PIs, right? There's all kinds of possible ways of doing that, and we're going to spend the next hour talking about that. But before we get into the content, I wanted to mention our sponsor, Intralinks Via. So first of all, Intralinks has been around in the life sciences industry for a long time. They're also in the financial services industries. So what they do for life sciences is they have a product called Via, that's VIA. And what it is it's a virtual workspace. So what that means, you can go on my website and look it up. Just go under Powered by Intralinks on the Clinical Trials Guru, and you'll be able to see it there. What that means is that they're trying to replace the USB. They're trying to make document sharing and collaborating on work with your team members or even externally, like if you're a research site and you're collaborating with a CRO or a sponsor, you can share documents in the workspace so that if you already know who needs access to certain documents, and sometimes there are multiple documents. They could be like hundreds of documents, right? Mm-hmm. You don't want to spend your time emailing everything to everybody and sometimes having to email twice, right? Because they say they didn't get it. Today I had a client tell me they didn't get an email of mine, and I knew I sent it, but I sent it again. But with Intralinks Via, that's not fair. It's not necessary. It's there. You grant access to who you want to see it. You can choose whether they're allowed to just read it, or to download, or to edit, or to re-upload, or to create another workspace. So that's Intralinks Via. And we talked about our services already, right?
You're forgetting about Intralinks Via. It's also HIPAA compliant. So no concerns.
HIPAA compliant too, yes. So you can put patient confidentiality information in there, all HIPAA compliant. So, and then you can grant access to certain members of your team or your organization to have access to those files, like coordinators or like recruiters who are pre-screening subjects, or maybe study nurses, right? Did I miss anything else about either Intralinks or about our services, DSCS?
No, just remember, DSCS, anything you need.
Anything you need in the whole wide world of clinical research, we will do it for you. We'll either partner with you or we charge a fee, all right? And very competitive fees too, right?
Much cheaper than competitors.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it, all right? So there's 3 customers that a research clinic, and probably a CRO too, but research clinics primarily have to service, right? The patients, the sponsors or CROs, and the physicians. So we got to promote ourselves and market ourselves to these 3 stakeholders constantly. So we did one webinar, I believe it was our first webinar, where we explained to people how to get more studies for your research organization, right? We haven't done one on patients yet because our webinar number 2, and by the way, these are all available on YouTube for free. Our webinar number 2 was about negotiating contracts and budgets, and that one went really well. We're still getting emails about that webinar a month later. And this one's all about how to find and network with principal investigators or sub-investigators, but primarily MDs that can either be your PIs, your sub-Is, or referral source, and then how do you compensate them? So the first half of this webinar is going to be how to locate these MDs, why you should locate them, who you should target, and then the second half is going to be all about how to compensate them and the different options that are there, because we've worked under a whole bunch of different models and they all work. They all have their pros and cons, and we're going to try to get into some of those during this hour. Right, Chris?
Sounds very interesting. Can't wait.
It's riveting stuff here. So I guess the first question is why? Why would a site need, let's say a site already has one PI. Why would they need another doctor? Why would they need to recruit another doctor?
Well, it's fairly simple. Their current PI probably is a specialist in one indication or another. Not indication, but specialty. If you want to broaden the site's possibilities for doing research studies, then you may want to find a doctor with another specialty.
Right. And yes, that is the most common reason. Another one may be your existing PI. Maybe you don't want to do all kinds of studies. You want to stick with the studies you're doing, but your PI is getting so many studies that he or she's overworked.
Sure.
Doesn't have time to come in the clinic 40 hours a week and needs to share some of the workload with another one, right?
And maybe the site doesn't want to be too dependent upon one PI.
So that's another reason why you may want to find a PI. There's a lot of reasons why you may want to find a sub-investigator too, and you go about it the same way. I mean, they're both MDs or DOs. Sometimes they're PhDs, but it's not often. It's rare, and I wouldn't target them. Although that doesn't mean you shouldn't target them either, but I wouldn't, right? And for the purposes of this webinar, it's all about targeting MDs, physicians, right? Practicing physicians. So when we get into the recruiting webinar, we can talk about getting after nurse practitioners, getting after PhDs at that point, because they all see patients. But for this webinar, it's all about MDs and DOs, basically physicians. So now we know why a site would want to find PIs. And the way I look at it is simple. A site can never have enough PIs. We work with a few clients who are only doing certain type of studies, right? They may not be able to conduct other types of studies that are out there. So we always talk about supply and demand here. And when there's a huge supply of a certain type of study, chances are the other studies are not really in very much supply. So you're pretty much gambling there with your specialty if you're only limiting yourself to certain specialties. So the way I see it, the goal of every research clinic should be to get a wide range of specialists on board to conduct their studies. Unless you're a purist and let's say you're a psychiatrist or a neurologist and you absolutely don't ever want to do any other type of trial, you can do that. You're free to do that. It's just very risky.
I would assume this is a common occurrence when you're a private practice as well. If you're strictly a research facility, obviously you don't want to limit yourself.
Right. And our goal as business owners should be to remain in business. I mean, that's rule number one. Like, no matter what the market does, your goal should be to remain in business. And then you can talk about how to become profitable. And then you can talk about how to become really profitable, right, by expanding. But goal number one should be just stay in the game, right? You can't win unless you're in the game, right? Football season's coming up.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So, okay, your goal should be, at least in my opinion, and I tell all my clients this, everyone I partner with, don't get too dependent on one specialty. They can dry up just like that. We started out with CNS, central nervous system, right? So psych, neurology. We're seeing a lot of neurology studies now, but the problem is psychiatrists want to do psych studies. Neurologists typically want to do neuro studies. And so even right there, with just doing those two type of trials, you need at least 2 PIs. Okay? So what do you do?
Though they can cross over.
They can cross over, yeah.
So long as they're willing to do so.
Yes, and if they're comfortable doing that, usually sponsors are okay with that. But the point is, what do you do when supply for those kind of studies is low or goes to zero? which is kind of like the way it is now, at least with psychiatry.
Absolutely.
We've been told by senior people at huge CROs that they're back to the drawing board on all psych studies. So guess what? All those sites out there that focused on just psychiatric trials and did not diversify themselves.
They're 2-3 years from seeing some studies, potentially.
Yeah. And maybe 1 year from being insolvent.
Absolutely.
Right? I know some sites, and you know them too, they only have like 2 studies right now because they refuse to diversify. Right? And all they're doing right now is they're sitting there and hoping studies are going to fall from the sky. And that's not going to happen. Sometimes it does, but you have to know the market. And right now, at least for psychiatry, and there's probably others, the market is pretty dry. So you need to diversify, right? So how do you diversify? First of all, how do you approach an MD? All right. There's 2 ways to go about it. There's actually more than 2 ways. There's online way, which we're going to get into. There's just going door knocking, right? Going around big medical office building, knocking on people's doors, or there's phone call. You can call. You're a rep. You're representing research clinic. Too. There's networking too. So okay, how would you network?
Well, there's a number of ways. If you have a PI in place, you can use your standing PI.
Very good. So yeah, the first place I would go to, always look for the low-hanging fruit first.
Which would be the networking.
Your current PI. So ask them, hey, do you have any colleagues who might be interested? You'd be surprised at how often PIs do not think about letting the research staff know that they have a colleague who might be interested in research, and the staff might be spending money and time looking for doctors when sometimes the easiest and definitely the best solution is finding a colleague of your current PI, right? Okay, but let's say you've exhausted that, right? Let's say your PI sent you all their colleagues and they're not interested, or they don't have time, or a number of things can happen, right? What do you do then? What is your approach, Chris?
Well,
what's your first approach? We have many, and we're going to get into some of them, but what's one of your first approaches?
Probably call doctors' offices, just cold calling, seeing if they're interested in, try to set up a meeting to see if they're interested in doing research.
Yeah, and that's actually what a few of our sites have had success with recently, right? As recently as like last week. So we work with some sites that are they're never satisfied with the number of doctors they have, which is good. I mean, you're pushing the SMO model at this point, but you don't have to be. So one of the other benefits of partnering with so many doctors is when you run out of space at your research clinic, let's say you're getting a lot of studies, you run out of space, you can do the same study at their office if they have a private practice. So now you have 2 studies, the same study at 2 different sites with 2 different PIs in your own geographic region. So this is all about how to attract PIs locally, right? Or if you don't have enough space at your site, you can do the study just at the other doctor's private practice. So this is why targeting physicians with private practice is best. Although the irony there is that the doctors with their own private practice, while they are best for research because they have their own patients, they have their own office, the other side of that coin is they don't have time.
Often.
Right?
Often, this is true.
So that's where you, the research organization, needs to go in there and let them know, hey, you don't necessarily need a lot of time. That's why we're here. That's why you're going to get 10, 20% of the budget rather than 100, because we don't expect you to do more than 10% of the work. Right? So the best way to do that, once you've exhausted your methods of your current PI's colleagues, is going door knocking, right? So you find a large medical building in your area. If you don't know where those are, Google will help. It's amazing how few people still don't use Google when they have a question, right? Or they need to find information about something.
We have examples of this just today.
It just happened earlier. Someone asked me a question. can't remember what it was, but it's something that you can just Google. So Google's good. Another website is healthgrades.com. I think it's healthgrades.com. If it's not .com, it's something else, but Health Grades, just Google that. It'll show you all the doctors in your area. You can break it down by specialty. Once you identify one, you can either call, like Chris says, or you can just go there and door knock. I prefer door knocking. If I can do it myself, I will. If it's calling, not that I won't do it myself, but we have people to call and set up an appointment, and then I will go and have the face-to-face meeting. Because you have to be mindful of your time. Recruiting PIs is probably not the only thing that's on your plate. So you have to be mindful of your time. Calling up doctor's offices from healthgrades.com is not really high value work. It's just routine tasks that you can train one of your medical assistants to do, or someone with a good phone presence.
Absolutely.
Like someone we just hired, right?
Correct.
So you'll be actually training this person to do this. Where are you going to start with the phone calls for recruiting doctors?
Well, actually, if he's already been put to task, so I've had him make a few phone calls and to see what his impression is, and to see if he has any success. I think
Now, how is he getting the list? Is he just Googling doctors?
just Googling doctors.
And are you telling him to focus on a certain specialty, or are you just saying, hey, go at it?
Well, the doctors we're looking for in these particular areas, it could be for any indication. So just have at it.
Have at it. Okay, so when he calls, what is his goal? What is he trying to get? Because he's never going to get the doctor.
Correct. He's just trying to get some time with the doctor for somebody in this area to meet with the doctor, set up an appointment, essentially.
Set up a face-to-face meeting.
Exactly. And
that's where you go as the site director or whatever your role is. Whoever's watching this video, I mean, I'm assuming
who's ever recruiting doctors.
Right. So that's where you go. Or if your organization can afford it, you hire a rep that can go out for you and do nothing but that, so that you don't need to spend your time doing that either. You can spend your time meeting with them. Once they meet with the rep and are interested in learning more, now you can go, because now it becomes high value work.
And there's two different approaches to this as well. You can let the doctors know, or not the doctor, but the site know that this is specific to research, that the time that you're requesting of the doctor will be to discuss participating in research. Or you can lead them to believe that this is just a pharmacy rep, and they'll almost always grant you an appointment with that route.
Right.
But they may be misled on why exactly you're there, and you may not get the time of day once they figure out why you're there.
And you may start getting requests to bring in lunch, and they're not being rude, but you have to understand these people, these receptionists who are answering the phones at these doctors' offices, they're used to sales reps, pharmaceutical sales reps, calling them and setting up appointments to meet with the doctor to talk about the drugs that they're promoting. So they're going to categorize you, or they're going to group you into that category and say, oh, yeah, you can come by. And by the way, we like Outback Steakhouse, right? What did they tell our one guy? We like Chipotle. And we have about 60 people in the office.
Yep.
So you either break the bank, or you tell them, hey, that's fine, but I only need to meet with a doctor and a few of their key staff members, so maybe I'll bring food for 10 people, right? Just say what you need to say to get in, spend as much as you're comfortable spending to get the receptionist to grant you an appointment.
Get by the gatekeeper.
Yes, and do not let them just take the food when you get there and not let you have a meeting with the doctor.
Which this does happen.
It does happen. We've had a client go out, do this exact same thing. It was about 10 people, right? So luckily they didn't buy that much food, and I think they, I recommended she buy Subway, but I think she ended up getting something more expensive. The doctor came in, talked to her for like 3 seconds and left, right? And so the rest of the time she was explaining research to people who could care less about research, probably don't even know what clinical research is.
And this was one of those scenarios where they weren't informed that research would be the conversation.
Right. So that's another fine line. I mean, you're always getting 99% of the time on the phone. This is why it's so tough. On the phone, you're going to get a receptionist. They're thinking lunch, right? They're like, yes, another rep that's going to bring us lunch.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking, I need to find this doctor to convince him to do research.
Yep.
Or to at least present research options for him.
Mm-hmm.
To either join us or to refer patients to us. And so there's a huge gap there between what they think you're coming for and what you're coming for. And oftentimes they don't intersect. So you got to make it intersect in a way. And a lot of it's luck too. It may take you 10 times, 15 times of doing this before you actually get one that is really interested.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people give up after that first one or two.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're doing it themselves and they don't have people taking care of those mundane tasks, right?
And they also become discouraged too.
They become discouraged. So this is like back in the day when I was doing this myself, and I still do, just to stay sharp, and you do too, right? We're actually meeting with a doctor later today, one that we've already networked with, and he may join us as a sub-I, and then he has colleagues who might want to join. So it could be good on a number of different fronts for us. But we also have people that go out. We have reps that go out. We have people calling. So when we don't have time to do that, it still gets done. And once they filter out the doctors who are not interested versus the ones who might be, then we can get involved. Right? So that's a good way to hack it and to save some time.
First one's always the toughest too, my opinion.
Yeah? Yeah. And after that, it becomes easier. Like after you find your second, because you already have one PI. So after you find that second one, it becomes easier because now not only can you network your existing PIs, ever expanding list of colleagues, because they come across new colleagues all the time.
Absolutely.
Now you have two. So now you're doubling that, right? So you're letting them and you're hoping that they're willing to help you refer their colleagues. And they oftentimes will because they would want their colleagues to get involved with research if they like it. For whatever reason, they don't want them to take their studies, but if you can convince them that, hey, they're not going to take your studies, we can do the same study with them at their office, just like we're doing it here with you. Now, let's say you have one study at 3 sites, you've just tripled your income, provided your gross revenues, provided that you can enroll the patients, which, again, that's why you want to target physicians that have their own private practice. Now, so we talked about door knocking and I guess calling, right? There's another way to attract doctors, and it's through the internet, right? The World Wide Web. Okay. So typically LinkedIn ads can work. Oh, there is one more way, and I'll talk about it after online. All right. So LinkedIn ads typically work. They're not that expensive. You can get away with paying like $2 a click, but the thing is you won't get that many clicks, so you won't really be spending that much, and it's hit or miss. These are LinkedIn ads. Okay, so this is where you're actually paying LinkedIn to put your ad. So if you go on LinkedIn right now, you'll see on the side that there's ads, right? Or just like Facebook has sponsored posts, LinkedIn has the same. We've had minimal success with LinkedIn ads, right? When it comes to recruiting physicians. But we haven't done it enough to really be able to tell you whether it's the best way to go about it or not. That's LinkedIn ads. Now, old school LinkedIn networking with people can still work. So, and that doesn't cost you anything. It just costs you time. Just like door knocking or calling, it's the same thing. Still takes time. This is where the person who you put in charge of making the phone calls or going out and meeting with the doctors can also be doing some of this LinkedIn marketing, right? So you can search. The good thing about LinkedIn is you can search. So you can search all those people you Googled and all those people you called and all those people you door knocked. You can now add to your LinkedIn network. Chances are they all have a LinkedIn. Physicians, most of them are on it. I don't know how often they check it. Some check it often, some don't, some do every now and then. But LinkedIn is for a free way. I mean, it's a great way to get in touch with someone. We have a site that is experimenting with blog posts, and they're going to start doing targeted Google ads to get physicians. In fact, they know Amir. We did 2 interviews with Amir. Amir Bashir from our research site in Chicago Clinical Trials, LLC. So he's an SEO guy, search engine optimization. And once we figure out how to attract physicians by using Google Ads, which also only charges like $2 to $3 per click for this keyword, we may find another source of recruiting physicians, and we will of course let you know. But if you have an SEO guy or anyone remotely tech savvy about how to use AdWords, just try to experiment with targeting physicians in your area. And luckily, unlike recruiting patients, there's no IRB there looking at what you're putting as an ad. There's the anti-kickback laws that you got to worry about, so you can't put "get money fast" for referring patients. Got to be a little more refined than
Could
that.
be a problem,
right? Yeah, it could be a problem. So what you should do is put something catchy like physicians can earn extra revenue by participating in clinical research or something like that, right? There's so many different ways to split test this on Google AdWords. If you don't know how to do it, Google it. If you really need like professional help and you have a little bit of a budget, Chris and I and Amir, we can help you with this, a part of our DSCS consulting services that we offer. So we'll do search engine optimization for your physicians to find physicians for you, in addition to plugging you into our infrastructure where we're calling, and we can call in any zip code or any geographic region, find you a physician, and then set up a lunch appointment for you or someone that you appoint to go out there and meet with them, right? So we're not going to go to like Chicago to find a doctor for you because we're in California, but we'll set up that lunch appointment and then you'll go in, present. You may have to do that a few times, may cost you some money as far as providing lunch and some time, but if you do that enough, it will work.
And we'll also make sure they know you're there for research.
Yeah, we have to.
You're not a pharmacy rep.
We're not sales reps. We're similar to sales reps in that we provide food, but we're talking about research opportunities for your physicians or any physician in this office that might be interested. So online marketing is another way. Amir told me he also used Craigslist to recruit physicians and actually got a few people emailing him.
He had some success?
Yeah, he's had some success, and I believe, is it free or do you have to pay $25 for Craigslist?
That I don't know.
I know if you're posting a job, you have to pay $25, right?
But if he's doing gigs, I think it's free.
Yeah, and I never thought doctors are checking Craigslist, but I was just proven wrong last week. So Amir told me he's had success finding physicians. He's trying to find a very particular kind of physician, so Craigslist is not necessarily working, but other physicians are emailing him from Craigslist. So we're adding more.
Well, job market is tough for everybody.
It is tough, yeah. He was targeting specifically surgeons. Didn't get any surgeons, but he got a bunch of, well, not a bunch. He got like 2 or 3 other doctors that were interested that emailed him, and he probably paid $25 for the post or free, depending on where he posted it. Right?
It's interesting.
Any other online strategies?
Well, I would just say I think those you would search for, if you could limit your search criteria, would be younger doctors, maybe those fresh out of residency.
And why would you want younger doctor? That's a good point.
They're not committed to any facilities, possibly. They may be searching for a job. When I say fresh, I mean like immediately out of residency.
Okay. But they may not have private practice.
Correct. But at the same time, now you have a PI for maybe some new specialty for your site.
Okay. So and you can maybe help them establish
exactly
a private practice, which is kind of like the second perfect timing, exactly 2:30. Second half of this webinar.
Oh, good segue.
Couldn't have done better, Chris. Good job, man. Excellent job. So there is one more way to attract physician, and that's direct mail. So direct mail still works because you're not just like, you're not going to pay for a list that you're buying off the internet and mail out like 1,000 letters. What you're going to do is the doctors you're already calling and you're already finding on Google and you're already finding on LinkedIn. So now you're just putting them more and more into your little sphere, right? You're sending, or your sales funnel, basically. You're sending them a direct letter. Don't get one of those pre-printed envelopes with the pre-printed a stamp. Those look like mass mailers. What I do when I get those is immediately toss them. I don't even open it.
As
Handwritten, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you ever throw away a handwritten piece of direct mail?
Less likely.
Less likely. You still would?
Still mine.
Wow, you're cold-hearted, man.
Still mine.
Okay, handwritten, to and from,
Mm-hmm.
and a nice stamp.
Mm-hmm.
Throwing it out?
Less likely, but
Less likely.
possibly.
Okay, so then you want to have a letter in there. And I've learned this strategy by other research clinics in my area over there when I was working in Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
Other clinics were trying to take our PIs,
Mm-hmm.
and they were sending them letters.
Mm-hmm.
And these PIs told me I can open all their mail because they're rarely there.
Mm-hmm.
So I opened it, and there was the same letter to each PI from different research clinics. We'd like you to join us. So if you really want to get mercenary with it, you can target other research clinics in your area.
Wow.
I wouldn't I mean, hey, I don't know if I wouldn't recommend it. It's business, right? Apparently other clinics are doing it. So if you wanted to, you could. But there's so many other physicians in your market where you don't have to do that.
I'd only recommend that if I were desperate.
If you were desperate, because it could backfire.
And it's going to be more costly too. They already know what they're being paid for where they're at.
This is a good point. This is a
They're
good
going to want
point.
more money to go to Y clinic.
But it'd be easier to get them a study because they have experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you can, I'm just putting it out there, all right? I'm not telling you to do that, but you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Rather
Sure.
mercenary. It's been done on me. I personally have never done that before. What I have done is talked with physicians face to face. Once I found out they were working at another clinic, then I brought it up and said, oh, if things ever go bad at your site or you don't like your current site anymore, you can come work with us.
Mm-hmm.
I've done things like that. But that was in a natural conversation after we've already established some context. It wasn't just me sending a piece of direct mail at them.
Mm-hmm.
But your letter should be something along the lines of, we would like you to join our research clinic. If you want to learn more about clinical research, here's our website, or call me directly, something like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you would add?
Mm-mm.
And we're going to have our guy do this too. Just thought of it. Actually, he can watch this webinar.
Yeah, I was thinking that already.
He will watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we're training him. Chris is going to be training him. He's going to watch this webinar. All right. Second half. Okay. You found one.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe through LinkedIn, through mail, through a meeting, whatever. You found one. He wants to do it, or she wants to do it. Now what?
Well, you have to establish a payment.
Establish a payment, but first you establish what their role is going to be. So if they're the same specialty as your PI, you have two options. Let's say they have zero research experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can add them as a sub-I for your current PI.
Mm-hmm.
If they actually come in and do certain procedures, you pay them for that.
Mm-hmm.
If they're just a sub-I by name on paper, just to boost their CV,
Mm-hmm. Establish the CV.
establish their CV, what would you pay?
Probably nothing.
Probably nothing, but it does depend, right?
Sure.
So-
as much as $500 per study. I mean, they have to sign typically 2 pieces of paperwork per study.
Right. They usually the financial disclosure form and their CV,
Mm-hmm.
then they have to give their license,
Mm-hmm.
a copy of their license. Now, if they have a big private practice, they could be encouraged to refer patients. And the way you do that by avoiding any anti-kickback or referral fees.
Well, if they're sub-I, there is no anti-kickback.
Is that true?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, just in case there is another.
Because if they're
step.
sub-I, they can refer patients to the study.
Okay, that's true. That's true. But just in case they're not, right? Or let's say they're not a sub-I, or you just want to be safe. Better
Mhm.
safe than sorry.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pre-screening form you can give them. We have front and back, and it involves a full physical, full history,
Mhm.
full med history, all the medications they're on, all that stuff. That actually takes some time
Mhm.
for the physician to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually fair to compensate them for that.
Mhm.
And then that's between you and them, what you're going to compensate them for.
Sure.
Right? So that's one way to do it. Now, let's say that they're going to be sub-I for your PI,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're obviously going to get paid less. But, and this is where it gets interesting, if you know that you have a study where they're looking for add-on sites, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because enrollment's really slow.
Mm-hmm.
You can approach a sponsor and say, I have another site. We just signed up this PI. They want to do the study, and we're going to be managing the study for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you already know us. This person's now a colleague of our PI. In fact, they're sub-I on some of their studies.
Mm-hmm.
We want to have this site activated as well. So now you're doubling your revenue, right? Instantly.
Sure.
If they're enrolling subjects and you're following GCP and all that stuff, you're doubling your revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Now you pay them much differently as a PI. And that's where we get into a wide variety of different payment options.
Mm-hmm.
Principal investigator, right? So what would be a fair compensation for a PI? And I know it varies, and sites, I've heard anywhere from I've heard free. I've heard sites that have at their site now.
Okay, so all the work's being done at their site.
Yeah, but it's all the payments are coming to you still.
Okay, I
Because
understand.
that's now your second site.
So you have no involvement with that site other than you got to study there.
No, because you're probably gonna have to send staff members there, like coordinators,
Okay.
because you can't rely on their staff to do it.
Okay.
So you're gonna have to either hire another coordinator or send one of your experienced coordinators there
Mm-hmm.
regularly for visits.
Well, if he's handling payroll, so if he's using his own personnel, obviously you're going to pay him more. If you're using your own personnel, but you're still using his facility, so you have to figure in what are you paying him for, usage of his space or her space. I would say a fair percentage would be around 25.
25.
Mhm.
Okay, so
If you can do less than 25, it's better for you.
And that's with you having your own staff do the work.
Correct.
Do the EDC, do the queries, meet with the monitors, do the visits, create the source doc, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But some of that stuff you can now leverage to both sites, like source docs, right? Creating reg binders. I mean, that could become either a satellite site or a brand new site, depending on how the sponsor wants to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like your PI, they may not want to let that person be the PI,
Mm-hmm.
but they may let your PI have two sites.
Mm-hmm.
It's called satellite site. And then the sub-I is there, but the sub-I will be doing all the work.
Mm-hmm.
So under that scenario, you would still pay the sub-I as you would pay a PI,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I generally would recommend not letting the PI pay their own staff, because then you are going to be giving them more of your budget, and it complicates things. Because why are they paying their staff, but then you're getting paid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just cleaner and it works better, and you can have more control over the situation by having your staff go out there. And if that means hiring another coordinator, that's what you got to do. But you're going to save more money in the long run by doing that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of any scenario where that's not true? Maybe a startup that doesn't have money?
Yeah, startup's going to be unwilling.
Well, if you're a startup, you should get your first site squared away first before you do this, right?
Yeah, I would think so. But we've talked to a number of people that think they can jump in and be an SMO
Oh, yeah.
immediately.
The other day I got an email, hey, Dan, I'm interested in opening an SMO with 30 sites.
Yeah.
My reply was start with one first.
Yeah.
Freaking guy. Calm down.
Well, you never know. You might be a multimillionaire and have the funds.
No, that's a good way to burn your millions.
Sure.
If you don't know what you're doing and you have $1 million, I understand it's not the wisest investment to keep in your savings account.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what's a lot more foolish than keeping in your savings account?
Opening up 30 sites and
And
having
burning
no idea what
it.
you're doing.
And burning it.
Sure.
Because that $1 million would have still been there at Chase.
It only lasts about a month.
Yeah.
30 sites.
That's right. So go slow. Start with one at a time. Even if you have money, start with one at a time. Get the process. People love fast.
Sure.
People love quick. It feels good,
Mm-hmm.
right? Slow doesn't feel good. It feels like work. But at the end of the day, at least this is my personal philosophy, slow is better. Long run over the long run, right?
You can make an argument for both.
You can make an argument for both, but you'd really have to convince me about that one.
Right now, it's not the time or place.
No,
so.
definitely not. But the slow way, at least in my opinion, is good. If you want to open up 10, 20 sites, go ahead. Use this same strategy. But then you're going to have to be hiring a lot of people and making sure that things don't fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then it could all come back to your site, the one that's actually producing money. And if one of your other sites get audited and you're the same company, FDA could come to your site.
Mm-hmm.
Or then IRB could come to your site, or a sponsor could come to your site
Mm-hmm.
and say, well, what's going on here? If at this site everything's running like a circus, what is it like over here? Right? So if you go about it too fast and try to expand too fast, it's also not good. You have to find the balance.
Sure.
Somewhere in between. So what's another way to compensate a PI? Let's say they don't want 10% or a percentage, or let's say you don't want to give them a percentage.
Put them on salary.
Put them on salary. Okay, so that's another option. What would you consider would be a fair salary for one study?
Well, one study. It's all dependent upon time. Just speaking off of experience, I mean, I've had PI that came 1 day a week and was compensated $3,000 a month.
That's right. Yeah, I remember him. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do remember him.
So,
we're gonna stop the live stream now. Sorry, you guys have to go on the webinar.
So it's all dependent upon time and what the physician is willing to accept. There's a lot of variables there, but I would say you're probably looking at, if you can wrap a physician up for 6 hours a week, you probably get away with $3,000 a month, maybe $4,000.
Yeah, but how would you measure the hours? Because if it's their own private practice, they can say they're there.
True.
Like we have that going on at one of our sites now.
True.
They're there all the time, but yet they're not there.
How many hours are they dedicating to research?
Yeah.
Definitely true. A little more difficult to measure. That's where, I guess you'd want to base it upon what you think your revenue stream will be from this PI. It's about the best way to do it. That's how I would do it.
This is why I like percentage first.
Sure.
Right? So
I agree. I do
there's
too.
ways to hack. The first 5 studies.
Well, if I can interrupt.
Yeah, please.
It's better, in my opinion, it's better to start out with a percentage when you're first starting. Later, after you're up and running well, hopefully, better to convert to a salary.
Yeah.
In the long run, you make more money.
Exactly.
Both ways.
Exactly what I was gonna say.
Oh,
so
right.
yeah, no, I mean, because it makes sense because we've been doing this for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But to someone watching, it doesn't make sense. So yeah, and I would go as far as saying the first 5 studies percentage.
Mm-hmm.
All right. After that 5th study, and they have to be real studies, none of this BS survey studies where you're circling numbers and you're getting $500.
Yeah.
None of that's the real phase 1 through 3 trial.
Yes.
Right. 5 of those, make sure if you're enrolling, if your PI is proving that they can enroll, I wouldn't move them to salary until they can prove that they can recruit patients for me, or if I can figure out how to recruit patients for these studies.
Mm-hmm.
So first 5 studies, 5 real studies, percentage, anywhere from 8 to 25. And this is where you're going to have to negotiate and honestly see what you can get away with at first while still being fair.
Mm-hmm.
But this is business and you're not putting a gun to their head. You're
All
negotiating,
true.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So anywhere from 8 to 25, somewhere in that's the percentage you're going to give them. After that 5th study, let's say you get your 6th, now you tell your PI, and they may be not willing to do this because they're smart. They're going to think, well, Why are they willing to do this, right?
Mhm.
But some of them might prefer the consistent revenue rather than getting paid like once every 2 or 3 months when you get paid, right?
Mhm.
They may say, well, I'm willing to take less for a consistent paycheck.
Mhm.
That's the trade-off. So what I would do at that point is try to get away with like 4,000 a month.
Mhm.
They may want more. I've gone as far as 12. Yeah, I've gone as far as 12,000 a month for one PI.
Mhm.
They were doing a crap load of studies,
Mhm.
right? But somewhere from 4 to 12, and
I would go lower than that. As little as 2.
little less too.
Sure. Depends on the amount of time they're putting in, how busy they are.
Yeah, you go. Another option is you can kind of compromise and make a hybrid of it. Say I'll give you 2,000 a month plus like 5%
Sure.
or 10.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That way they still have some incentive, but they know they have some sure money coming in as well,
Mhm.
right? Any other scenarios how you can compensate PIs?
No, that's about the only 2 ways I can think of: percentage or salary.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it's more of a sub-I kind of thing, but per visit, per fee, per assessment.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a sub-I.
And we put all this stuff out here for you guys for free as we wrap up. You can do this. We encourage you to do this. But if you can't, or if you don't have time, my consulting firm can. We're building a team that's going to be able to handle nothing but getting doctors, nothing but getting studies, nothing but getting patients, nothing but negotiating budgets,
Mhm.
anything else you can think of, like nothing but creating source docs, everything. But for the purpose of this webinar, if you need help finding PIs, give us a call, 949-415-6256, or email me, Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. You want to give your email? Or you don't want to get
That's
swamped with
sufficient.
emails?
That's sufficient.
Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Join us next month. I have it written down on my calendar. That will be September, and I hope I'm not in Arizona, actually. I set it up for September 29th. It's a Tuesday. So that webinar is going to be another hour-long one, 12 months to 7 figures in research.
Excellent.
So how you can
Excellent
get
webinar.
that one, we're going to probably have a whole bunch of people on there
Mhm.
and a lot of calls after that, but it's possible. So how can you go from 0 to 7 figures in 12 months in research, right?
Mhm.
It's possible. People are doing it all the time. People are doing it in a good market. People are doing it in a bad market. People are doing it in a mediocre market. It's done all the time, right? So next month, the last Tuesday of September, from 2 to 3, same time here. Make sure you subscribe to the blog to get a reminder. And I'm going to try to figure out a way to put a calendar feature in there so you can push yes, you will be attending in your Google Calendar. And then if you need help getting studies or patients or doctors, give me or Chris a call, 949-415-6256. If you want a virtual workspace and you want to be on the cutting edge of technology and research, check out Intralinks Via. They are on my blog. Just go to theclinicaltrialsguru.com and look on the Powered by Intralinks tab. It explains what Intralinks Via is. It's really good
Mhm.
for managing multiple sites, like we just talked about.
Absolutely.
Remember that one PI here, one PI at this site.
Mhm.
Share your infrastructure.
Mhm.
You can share all that stuff there, especially if they're satellite sites. You can have a trial master file online, different things like that. So check out Intralinks Via. Thank you guys for watching. I would like to hear your questions about this webinar. Maybe there's some strategies that we missed out. I'm sure there are. There's probably
That's
dozens
perfect.
of ways to do this, right? We just talk about the ways that work for us. So we don't talk about what we don't know. We talk about what we've done. Okay. You want to add anything?
Nope. I think that covers it all.
Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned later for our next webinar. Dan and Chris from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.
See you soon.